Okay, hello everyone. Thank you very much for coming along today. My name is Caroline Scott. I am a teaching fellow at Google News Lab, which is part of the wider Google News initiative. Today we're going to be talking about telling stories through video, but just to give you a bit of an introduction to the Google News Lab, if you haven't come across us before, it's nice to see some familiar faces from yesterday, so thank you very much for coming back. We are a training group of journalists within the Google News Initiative, and our sole focus at Google News Lab is to train reporters around the world in a variety of storytelling tools. So we aim to help you merge technology with storytelling to help you do your jobs more creatively, more effectively, and essentially so you can get on with telling the story and we can give you the tools to help you do that. So yesterday we spoke about some fundamental tools for journalists like data visualization and research and verification. And today we're going to be focusing on video. Video is a very popular topic at the moment, of course. This is our training website where we have a lot of trainings on not just video production, but also all of our other tools as well. Now, we have had some sessions during this week so far on video production, you know, from the different platforms and, of course, just engaging audiences. And I'm sure I don't need to tell you guys how important it is to engage audiences with video nowadays. You can just see just now, you know, 58.4% of us, you know, over half the population of the globe are on social media. Not just on social media, are active on social media now. So as journalists and as storytellers, we really need to be connecting with our audiences more. But just how do we do that? Because there are some challenges that we do face, don't we? You know, some of us are from really small newsrooms with lower budgets. Some of us are from bigger organisations with big budgets, but maybe not potentially the staff to create the videos we want or, you know, connect with our audiences how we're looking to do so. So just to give you some stats, and then we're going to go on to how to actually produce the video. So we've got 500 hours of video uploaded every single minute to YouTube in over 100 countries in 80 different languages. So we are obviously working with a lot of content now. We can't really be in a space not to be producing this. 2 billion people logged in viewers visiting YouTube every month. And of course, the number increases when you think about the amount of people that aren't logged in to YouTube. 1 billion, more than 1 billion hours of YouTube's content watched every single day, with the majority of that watched on our mobile devices. Okay, so whether that's vertically or horizontally watched with the smartphone in our hands. So how do we improve our video output? And I know that everybody in this room, we probably all come from different backgrounds, you know, whether we are print journalists by trade or whether we, you know, have graduated straight from university and are, you know, completely native to shooting and editing content. So I'm going to be going through some skills with you today. And then we're going to be talking about some of the tools that we have at Google, which are very, very unique that hopefully you guys can take away to start producing more video content. So first of all, shooting video. This is a hurdle that we see in newsrooms a lot. You know, how do we actually shoot video? What cameras do we use? You know, what equipment? A lot of reporters tend to think we need to stick with that traditional broadcast camera. You know, we need to be spending thousands of pounds or thousands of euros on buying this big traditional kit. That's not the case anymore, okay? That you have in your pocket, every one of you has one of these, I'm assuming, probably on you right now. This is a TV production studio that you're carrying around. You know, you can shoot in 4K resolution on this. When we broadcast on television, it goes out at 1080p, which is a lower resolution. So now with our smartphones, of course, there are, you know, some negatives to using a smartphone, but there are also some pros that we can take advantage of as well. So, of course, DSLR cameras, a little bit more of a consumer base, and those portable cameras, so things like GoPros. How can we tell stories using wearable cameras, using the smartphones that we have in our pocket? Because at the end of the day, the best camera is the one that we have when a story breaks, and we can get our cameras out and shoot, okay? So really important for your newsroom to be adaptable to using smartphones to take content. You know, they might not necessarily be trained as a video journalist or be somebody in the newsroom you might think is the only person responsible for your Instagram, only person responsible for, you know, producing videos for YouTube. But actually, everyone having the ability to produce video is so important in 2022. So thinking of that, I'm just going to run quickly through some shooting techniques. So how do we actually improve our videos? Because honestly, guys, the amount of times I see videos from large national broadcasters which are badly lit, or the audio is bad, or the content looks like perhaps user-generated content when it's not very stable, and so on and so forth, if they don't mean it to be. So thinking about lighting, shooting with natural light, all of these techniques, if you wanted to, you can go out and practice, while you're at the festival. Shooting with natural light if possible. So look for open spaces outdoors, shoot with big windows. We always say, you're going to shoot with the light on your subject's face. So if you're shooting an interview with someone, don't shoot them against a window, because what's that going to do? It's going to silhouette your interviewee, okay? So always looking for that light on your interviewee's face. You can get portable lights, of course. You guys know that you can get ring lights and box lights, of course. That's an expense for your newsroom. So if you don't want to do that, you can, of course, use outdoor lighting and anything that you have at your disposal. Also thinking about the audio, okay? So the microphones on our smartphones or on DSLRs are not good enough to capture the audio that you're going to want to use professionally, okay? So getting yourself an external microphone. Now, these vary in price. You can get really cheap lapel microphones from, just online shopping, so like Amazon, eBay, whatever it might be. You can just plug them in, €10, get a little lapel mic, plug onto your phone. If you don't have that and you're here now and you want to do an interview with somebody, just plug in your headphones, and they've all got a little microphone on your headphones. You will have seen you talking into your phones. That's also really good. The amount of times I've seen documentaries made with a headphone jack, with the audio, because as long as you can use what you have, obviously, the content is the storytelling and what you are shooting, not the equipment. So having all the gear and no idea, right? Next thing is stability. If you want to get a beautiful, smooth shot, of course, there are lots of companies out there that sell things like tripods, handheld gimbals. If you don't have that, if you don't want to invest in stability, pieces of equipment, you can, of course, make sure that you're holding your phone really still, leaning against a wall, and so on and so forth. Even things like selfie sticks can just be an extra support. Okay, so a lot of broadcast journalists that I've been training, they're going out with their phones, they're shooting an entire news package for broadcast TV, they're editing it on their phones, and then they're pushing it out. So that's just one way, of course, that's just one workflow, but it can be done on something like a mobile device, or of course, if you want to shoot with a DSLR, that's fine. So there's no right and wrong way, but you have to pick the way that's best for your newsroom. The next thing is your resolution. Always make sure you're capturing your content in a high resolution. So if you're using a DSLR, of course, you can change this in the settings. If you're using a smartphone, whether you've got an Apple device or an Android device, make sure that you change the settings to a high quality. So 720p HD and above, would recommend 1080p. You can do this in your camera settings on your phone, or in 4K. But of course, the higher resolution that you're going to shoot in, the more space it will take up on your device, okay? So resolution is all about the amount of pixels that are in your shot. So that means that you will be able to zoom in and use the content for more platforms as well, okay? So just making sure you get the basics right. Now, thinking about editing video, we don't need, and of course you can do, if your news organization at the moment has already invested in desktop editing software, that's fantastic. And those platforms are great for that. Things like Final Cut Pro, Adobe Premiere Pro, Avid, and so on. You guys might be familiar with those of you that have studied journalism or video production at university. You'll know how to use them. However, there's lots of free computer software that your newsrooms can use as well, things like Blender and Lightworks. We've also got Shotcut, DaVinci Resolve. The best thing is to pick one, learn how to use one, and stick with it. Okay? If you try to download everything, it's not going to be valuable to you because you won't be able to excel in it. There's also things like online tools. So if you're looking to create more social content, these are just a few that we found, but there are lots available online. Clipchamp, Animoto there. So online tools are also great as well as I've mentioned, smartphone editing apps, okay? So there are lots of ways to edit your video content. If you have reporters in your team where you're going to send them out and you think, right, we're going to create a video package on, or when we cover stories, we want you to get behind the scenes content on your phone, whatever it might be, make sure that you've picked something to shoot with and something to edit with, okay? Now, these are free options. Of course, there are paid-for options, like to shoot with maybe Filmic Pro. That's the cinematic choice at the moment. Editing apps, things like LumaFusion or KineMaster, some of you might have used those before. Of course, those are paid for, but these are available to you as well. And also getting to grips in your newsroom with royalty-free content that is available out there. the amount of newsrooms that we come across where they think, well, we just don't have subscriptions to, royalty-free content, especially with music and sound effects. There are so many options out there. At the end, I'll give you our contact details, and you can get in touch as we've got lists of these types of things that you might want to start using. So royalty-free content, this is just a few examples. But making sure you have some kind of workflow in your organization so you know where you're going to go to get certain things and what you're going to shoot and edit with. So at Google, we have what's called a Google Journalist Studio. Now, this is not like our training website that I showed you at the beginning, the g.co/news training. That's where you're going to get your on-demand learning. The Google Journalist Studio is almost like a page of tools that we think are going to be most useful to you guys moving forward. These are not strictly on video production. This is everything from research, data visualization, verification, and so on. But we do also have some tools that will be useful when you are creating video as well. So I'm going to go through those, but definitely worth one writing down, and we'll dive back into those later. So one of the tools that we have here at YouTube is the YouTube creator page. Okay, so this is not designed specifically for journalists. This is designed for all creators. But we feel that journalists can also benefit from all of the creative techniques that you see with influencers, with content creators on platforms like YouTube. So, if you are looking to connect, especially with younger audiences, having a look at the other content that's out there, getting inspiration from the way they shoot, the way that they edit their packages together can also be really useful as well.
Hey creators, let's talk about how to be a successful YouTube creator.
How to get a nicely composed shot,
Super chats and why you need to start using them,
and how to make money with your channel.
So how does it work?
In this video,
Let's talk about the YouTube Shorts Fund.
YouTube channel membership.
How do you get started with live streaming?
Start filming, start shooting, start editing.
Make it pop.
So it's essentially a YouTube page to show you how to do better on YouTube, okay? So all storytellers, you can jump onto this, and as you can see, there's different sections. So things about how to get started on YouTube, how to build your community, how to engage with audiences in the comments, everything from policy and guidelines, growing the channel. Everyone who creates any type of video content can benefit from this page in some way or form, okay? Even if you've got thousands of subscribers, hundreds of thousands of subscribers, or if you're just starting your channel from scratch, okay? So these are guided lessons that we've provided at YouTube to enable you to interact with your audiences in different ways and just to experiment, okay? Because as we all know, everything is moving so fast nowadays, we really need to keep on top of, what people are doing. And that's why we're all here, isn't it? To learn from each other. So definitely make sure you check out that page. It's a great place to find out. So when we are creating videos, sometimes it's really useful to think outside of the box. So not just look at what other people are producing, but also to think, what is a style that we have not used yet? What type of video has my news organisation not created? So every single story that we see, breaking news, long-form investigations, all of those, we can look to format them differently, okay? So thinking about every single news story as, of course, we've got a typical 3-minute or 90-second news package. But what about tutorials, Q&As, user-generated content? There are lots of organizations that are using user-generated content to their advantage by getting their audience to send them videos, and then they package them up, okay? So because we all have a smartphone nowadays, you can use user-generated content to your advantage. Documentaries, behind the scenes, giving our audience an insight into how the news is made. One of the main tips I can give you is if you are looking to produce more content and you're feeling really overwhelmed, is to firstly have a look at different video styles. And of course, there's lots more than this, but have a think about what you can do as part of your everyday life. So if you're already going to send reporters out to report on different stories in particular places, get them to shoot a video about what they're doing that day, whether that's for, whatever platform you're on. So, get them to actually shoot content where they already are. So you're not giving them an extra job. Essentially, they're already there. They're documenting and they're not creating, okay? There's a lot to be said about documenting what you're doing because audiences are interested in how newsrooms are telling the news, especially in this era of disinformation. We need to be as transparent as we possibly can. So one of the tools that we have here at Google, which I believe will really help you with your video production, it's one of the most exciting tools for me to teach. It's called Google Earth Studio. And if you are, and I'm sure you all are because you're here today, interested in creating video, making the most of all of our satellite imagery at Google and animating it is going to really help you to produce something that's really eye-popping and going to be engaging your audience. So essentially, those of you that were here with me yesterday, we talked about Google Earth and the range of 3D content we now have in Google Earth, the interactive projects that we can create. However, Google Earth Studio is a completely separate geo tool that we have here at Google, and it allows you to animate all of the footage that we have, all of the 3D imagery. So you can fly over buildings, you can whiz by locations, so you can take audiences to the scene of a crime. You can take audiences to places that your journalists can't actually get to. You can get drone footage without having a drone, for example. This is the type of footage that you can produce.
U.S. Women's National Team will be celebrating their record-setting third Women's World Cup trophy in the 5 boroughs, with the ticker tape parade later today in Lower Manhattan.
It's pretty amazing content, isn't it? And this is available to all of you to use. The tool is absolutely completely free. All of the reporters in your newsroom have complete access to this. You're going to apply for access and you'll be given it, and you can start producing MP4 videos that then you can either use by themselves or you can integrate into a wider project, okay? So I'm going to show you some case studies. So for example, let's say you're taking audiences to introduce them to, as you can see here, the Summer Games. So great for locator maps. We're going to establish where our audience is going to go. This piece is done by ABC News. You can see here that they're touring audiences over Everest. So they've got a long form article, and rather than actually export this as a video, they created a drone-like shot and exported it as individual image files and then used it as a piece of scrollable storytelling. So as the audience members scrolled up the page, they also flew over Everest. Okay, so they did this in the back end of their website. This example here, this is from a Spanish publisher. You can see here they use Google Earth Studio to show audiences and put into context a story that happened, because basically a nuclear power plant, there was an explosion, a lid flew off a chemical bin, and it flew 2.5 kilometers across the air, hit a house and killed somebody. Okay, so they were able to use Google Earth Studio to put that story into context, to just show us how far and how much of an impact that explosion had. National Geographic have used this to show us the route. This is a famous trek that's done over in, I think this is in Spain. So you can see that we're flying over, flying over forests, we're flying over different tracks. A lot of people, when they use Google Earth Studio, they think, oh, this is just for travel reporting. Yes, because we can, of course, show people pretty places on the map. But actually, if we're taking people to the scene of where things are happening, we can really help them to put and visualize what's going on. Now, you can also import KML files into Google Earth Studio, okay? So if you are using, let's say, reporting on a fire that happened, so you can see in this example here, this is a visualization of the 2021 Tamarack fire in northern California and Nevada. So we can see this is essentially another layer on top of our map that we can see here on the map. Now, if I was to just play you this video, in Google Earth, you can shade particular areas, you can put lines around different areas on a map, and then you can export that as a layer and bring it into Google Earth Studio creating an animation, but also we can see exactly where the fires are, where the fires spread, where the intense heat was, and so on. So as a journalist, as a storyteller, you are able to give your audiences what looks like the most complex, piece of video that might have only been able to be achieved in the past by, video teams, by animators. Now you guys can do this yourself. So I'm going to show you what Google Earth looks like in the front end. So this is Google Earth. Those of you that have been used to video editing on, say, Final Cut Pro or Avid, you'll be used to what's called a video editing timeline. Now, if you haven't used it before, don't be overwhelmed with all the notches and diamonds and things like that. You can learn step by step, as we've got a lot on our YouTube channel, so we can take you through bit by bit. Or we can come and do some training with you. But you can see I can create this visualization where I'm essentially taking my audiences from outer space all the way to the Sydney Opera House. Okay, so all I've done in this example here is I plotted exactly where I wanted to go, and I plotted the angle that I wanted to look at the Sydney Opera House at, and I've just entered that, and you can see it's just made a visualization for me. Now, if I wanted to, I could export that as just one video. I could use that as part of my video package. I could have a correspondent that was at Sydney Opera House in this example. That could be a little opening title to really set the scene, see where I'm going. Or, of course, I can just use this as a piece by itself. I could export that, put it in the background as a TikTok video, use it as B-roll on my YouTube clips, and so on. All of this also exports with the copyright information on it already, so you don't have to worry about that. Now, anything like this, it does take a little bit of time to just get practicing with learning how to use this tool, but you can essentially act like a drone flying over different locations. So, for example, if I wanted to now zoom my camera in to the Sydney Opera House, I can tap here, I can zoom in, I set a keyframe. Again, very quick demonstration. But you see now I've given it another order at the end. I get those list of keyframes. That's basically an order telling the tool, I want to have this longitude, this latitude, this attitude, and so on. And you can see in between these 2 points now, my animation is going to swoop in. Okay, so you can see how quick and easy that little transformation was. Okay, so if you wanted to use that as part of a piece of storytelling, the Washington Post have done a really interesting piece on YouTube documenting the lead up and the death of George Floyd. And they zoomed from essentially space right down to the street where he was killed. Okay, so they were able to get there directly. So, any of this footage you can export and then you can put into Adobe After Effects if you want to, or you can just use it as it is. Okay, so this is Google Earth Studio. Again, an amazing tool that you guys can get started with. You all will have access straight away. The last tool that we have here in our video course is Web Stories. Now, Web Stories is essentially a way of telling a story vertically or horizontally to our audience in a format that they're used to. So, when we're on Instagram or we're on TikTok or we're on Snapchat, we're used to this tappable storytelling, aren't we? We're just all got no attention spans anymore. I'm the same, just tap, 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 go back. Just want to kind of get the content as quickly as we can. Now, web stories are essentially a format that's designed by Google that you can put onto your own website. So you don't have to send audiences to a social media platform anymore. You can create this tappable storytelling on your own website itself. So essentially, they're web-based versions of the story format you're already used to. So your audience already knows how to use it. It's not a surprise to them. They'll be able to jump into this straight away. You can use this with pictures, you can use this with videos, or you can just use this with text. So it's completely up to you. Now, your skills as video producers, obviously, if you don't have a lot of history in creating video, or you are feeling a bit nervous about it, there are lots of different tools that you can produce web stories with. You can either use this in the back end of WordPress, for example. You can get a web stories plugin for your organization, or there are even like phone applications that you can get started with as well. So there are lots of different ways that you can. And just jump onto the website afterwards. It's just webstories.google, and you'll be able to find more information about that. But I'm going to show you some examples in a moment about how we can actually connect with audiences a little bit differently through video. Because, when we think of video, we think of long-form video or short-form video, don't we? We think of like either grabbing them on social media for these quick like YouTube shorts or Instagram like quick videos or story formats. But actually, with web stories, we can use our long form video and we can cut that down to short form bits. So it's another way to repurpose our content if we don't have a lot of time. So if you are, coming from a news organisation where, you are fantastic at producing long form documentaries and you want to create something that's a little bit more snappy, or you've got a lot of user generated content, or let's say, you've got reporters out in the field that are collecting lots of shots behind the scenes or answering, questions, Instagram lives, and you're repurposing them, whatever it might be, you can make sure that you can repurpose that into a web story, or of course, create native web story straight away. So you have complete control over these. You can decide how long these stay up on your website. You can have them permanently on your website, or you can take them down. So, for example, you might want to do a feature on a particular story to summarize, let's say there's like a long form story that keeps going on, let's say coronavirus. You might want to have a web story that just keeps being added to, or you might want to take it down and refresh it. So it's completely up to you. Now, these are vertical when you're looking on a phone, and you can watch them landscape when you're on a computer as well. So I'm going to show you some examples of these. So this one here, this is from Vice. Hopefully, if we can get it to load. This is from Vice, and they've basically got a long-form video that they've cut down into individual little story snippets. So they haven't then gone and made a web story, repurposed everything. They've just been able to upload essentially a really gorgeous edited video with subtitles. You can see I can put the audio on or off there. And you see, me as an audience member, I can tap through. So I can tap forward, or I can tap back. So I can skip to the parts of the video that I want to watch, okay? So your audience can really control their own storytelling experience. Another example here, this is from Refinery29 on how money is made. Now this is a little bit different because as opposed to Vice, who just wanted to break down a really long form video into little sections, actually Refinery29 did individual posts to tell you how money is made, but you can see each individual picture or video that they've done is completely separate. It's not really loading, but essentially you can add your pictures on top, your text underneath, so you don't necessarily need to have a presenter. You don't need to have beautifully shot content. You could just have Q&As, you could have answers, you could have quizzes, and so on. So you see how each of these are chronological, and the audience can go back and forward. Okay, so either a big long video cut down or individual shots. This one here is a landscape web story. This is on bustle.com, short timeline of how women got the right to vote. You see, obviously, if your audience are coming to your website, maybe predominantly from laptops, potentially, you might want to create a landscape video, a landscape web story. So it's completely up to you how you choose to do it. So you can see here I can tap through, absolutely no video is used in this web story. And you can see as an audience taps through, I just get a picture and text. Now, every single one of you in this room could produce that, okay? Of course, video in itself, sometimes we get a bit nervous around video. It just takes a little bit of time to get into it. But, starting off with a static web story can also be really helpful if you just want to try to get into it quickly, okay? So essentially, we have a lot of help that you can access on web stories. We have a YouTube guide, a step-by-step YouTube guide, which essentially takes you through the process of creating a web story, the tools you need to do it, how to embed it onto your website, and so on, okay? So you're not on your own with any of the tools here today. We've got like packs of resources that you can access, okay? I'm just going to play you this video, which is an introduction to web stories. This is the first of the storytelling playlist. So I say we have resources for our web stories. You can go onto YouTube and do step-by-step with our presenter here. Okay, so this is the first episode to give you a bit more of an overview of web story format.
Welcome to Storytime, a new weekly YouTube series helping you make the most out of web stories. If you're here, then you're here because you have read or heard about web stories, and that's great. And look, it's easy to jump to the conclusion that these are your standard social app stories, and they just also arrive on the web now, 4 years late. Even the meme about something now having stories is 3 years old. So what gives? Current implementations focus on short lifespans and ultra low barriers to creation. That means they're less often Pulitzer material and more often humble brags, like me showing up a successful Dalgona coffee or Ramdon. Our bet is that the stories format works beyond the ephemeral use case and can become its own pillar in the media landscape. In other words, think of a story as another distinct publishing format on the web, like a blog post, a video or podcast. And we think that they fill a sweet spot between videos and text articles because they're usually cheaper to make than a video, and at the same time more engaging than a text article. They're more structured than a video, so you can skip ahead, go back and forth, and so on. And they're as scannable as a text article when done well. But there's more that's different about web stories. They wouldn't deserve the web prefix if they weren't significantly more open than their walled-off social counterparts. Web stories are yours, hosted on your server, making you money and not the serving platform, and can drive traffic to your site, YouTube account, or whatever else you desire. They're also as short-lived or evergreen as you want. And unlike with the social platforms, nobody can dictate what content you create. It's the web, so you make the rules. At Google, we're very confident about web stories to the point where we highlight them in several important places and go the extra mile to let them shine. First, on Google search, we trigger a visual block like this with web stories on select queries like things to do in New York. Of course, they also regularly appear in the blue links with this nice vertical thumbnail. But our bet is that an even more engaging and natural way is to discover web stories, well, on Discover. Google Discover is the home screen of the iPhone Google app, and it's been growing rapidly. And since web stories are open source and not locked to Google at all, any platform or search engine on the web can build experiences around them. I'm hoping to see many more integrations in the next months and years. Okay, great. This should give you a brief overview, but let's talk a little bit more about this show. This show exists because the way web stories are used is fundamentally new. Besides a handful of publishers, there just aren't that many creators on the web who have a lot of experience with this type of storytelling. Contrary to a blog post, where you start with the written text and then amend it with images and video, it's usually the reverse for web stories. And also, unlike a blog post, unless it's highly art-directed, web stories require visual composition, so you might need to level up your design skills a little bit. And hence this series. I want to help you on this journey and share with you everything that could help you achieve success with web storytelling. In the upcoming weeks and months, you'll learn the ins and outs of the editorial process, a lot of design tips and tricks, the publishing workflow and tools, the asset sourcing, monetization advice, and many more intriguing topics. So get going, start creating stories, and subscribe to the channel. And don't hesitate to reach out via the comments below or on the Web Creators Twitter or Google Web Creators Instagram. Onwards. Welcome to Storytime, a new weekly.
Okay, so as I said, there are lots of different tools that you can use to make web stories. Now, some of you who are, quite adept at using WordPress, that is probably one of the most popular ways of making a web story. However, you can, of course, use mobile phone apps. There are lots of different apps available for Android and Apple users as well, so you can get started with them straight away. So, for example, if you have a lot of footage from Perugia and you wanted to do a roundup from your team, for your team back home, for example, you could do this while you're actually in Perugia, okay? And you can come and find me if you need any help in the process. So all of these tools that we've spoken about today with Google Earth Studio and web stories, as I say, you can find more information either on the Google Journalist Studio page where you can access them or on our g.co/news training page. So if you have any questions about mobile journalism specifically, video production as a whole, we are here all week, okay? So do come and flag us down and we can help you out with any of this, even things like workflows and stuff if you want to chat those over, okay? Now, as I said, the Google News Lab, we have teaching fellows all over the world and we're teaching in different languages. So if you are looking for training for your own individual organisation, whether that's in any of the video, podcasting, or even research, data visualization, verification, we would be more than happy to come into your newsroom or do a session online, completely funded by Google, and we can walk you through those, okay? So please get in touch with us. So this is our main website, as I think you guys have got. Today we have just launched a new guide to help you all in the advance of the practice of quality journalism, which is what we aim to do. So this is available in 17 different languages. You can access that via our news training website. And as I say, all of the information on our training is there as well. So you can either do things on PDF or do things live. Okay, great. Thank you very much for coming today, guys. And as I say, we are around if you need anything. Okay, thank you.